However, from day one, you're going to start seeing things inside yourself more clearly than you ever have before by incorporating these practices. Now, this is where it becomes very interesting because now not only do we experience this in ourselves, but we also increase our awareness and see things more clearly in other people. And this is where we kind of move into what I call mental yielding.
This is the Knocking Doors Down podcast. I'm your host, Jason LaChance, and here we unlock stories of resilience, triumph, and transformation. Hey, please hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're on. And while you're at it, why not leave a rating, a review, or a thumb up on YouTube and a comment in the video. And my guest on this episode is Jeff Patterson, the author of The Yielding Warrior, Discovering the Secret Path to Unleashing Your True Potential. Jeff's pathway to finding meditation and the yielding arts is a fascinating one. Jeff grew up in a small town in Oregon, later serving in the Marine Corps, but it was his passion for combat sports and martial arts that led towards meditation. Jeff is not only an instructor of meditative arts, but also Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Eskrima, Tai Chi, Qigong, Muay Thai, meditation, and he has a passion for fishing, music, and his family. Jeff and I discuss exactly what yielding is and how it can benefit you mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, as well as physically. Jeff shares insight on how you can control your dreams. I'm not talking about just your life path, I mean when you're asleep. We talk meditation, some of the misconceptions around exactly what it is, the yin and yang of breathwork, and the importance of pursuing your passions in life. We talk all that and more on Knocking Doors Down. Welcoming to Knocking Doors Down, Jeff Patterson, the author of The Yielding Warrior, Discovering the Secret Path to Unleashing Your True Potential. Got the book. Thanks for joining me, Jeff.
Hey, my pleasure. Good to see you again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, you know how I start my conversations, gratitude, because it's how I start my day. So 3 things you're grateful for today that you can reflect upon.
I'm grateful for my family and having 2 great kids that are smart and focused and just kind of the light of my life. I'm grateful for my community here at the Academy and all of my students who have been loyal and with me for many of them over 20 years, some of them as much as 30 years. And I'm grateful for being inspired to want to continue the practice and expand my education so I can be a better teacher.
And that inspiration is invaluable. I mean, where do you kind of dig for that answer or find it? Does it just kind of come in like a gift, or are you a searcher of it, or as we'll talk, yielding to and just waiting for that to come your way?
You know, a little of all of it. I've been my whole career, I've sought out great teachers from around the world and traveled the world many times looking for different teachers. And so I'm always looking to expand my knowledge from other people as well. I'm an avid reader. I love to read. And so I've usually got 2 or 3 books that I'm reading at any one time, and always pretty on that. And then a lot of it at this stage too is just with the cultivation and the discipline of a daily practice and having it start to teach you, you know, a lot of with the meditative arts, you'll learn something and you'll do it sometimes 10, 20 years. And all along the way, it's showing you different things at different stages in your development. And so there's that aspect of the learning as well.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. And you know, so I've gotten, let's see, just before chapter 6 in the book. And you mentioning that, you know, I was thinking the other night about it as I'm starting down this journey and essentially learning from you through your book further. It's an interesting convergence, right? Because you have all the life experience you have, and yet you have this practice that has been valuable to your life that you shared with others. And although we might use techniques repetitively, whatever it is, but maybe just one little extra drop of sand of knowledge comes in, and all of a sudden we can see a situation or that practice differently or yield something different.
Definitely. And it's one of the things that I've always really loved about the meditative arts. Sometimes I'll learn something from one of my teachers or something that I picked up on. And when I get it, I'll be like, I understand. That's great. That's very helpful. And then 5 years will go by and I'll be like, that's what he meant when he was teaching me this, and I'll have a whole different perspective of it. And it just keeps it new and fresh and wanting to explore it deeper and helps keep the motivation up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to dig into a little bit of your background, kind of growing up in a smaller town, because outwardly, I mean, you practice multiple martial art disciplines. You wouldn't be the guy I would expect to be a meditative individual, let alone a teacher, let alone the discussion of yielding. Because I did some Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and granted, I didn't get very far, but it didn't seem like a concept that ever hit me. So I find your path to where you are now very fascinating.
Yeah, so I got put on this path in a bit of a roundabout way. When I was a younger guy, I was really into Western boxing and I loved it. I loved the strategy, I loved the challenge. Everything about it was just fun for me. And so I used to go to this boxing gym that was just a couple blocks down the street from my academy here called Grand Avenue Boxing. It's not there anymore, but back in the late 80s and early 90s, it was kind of the only boxing gym here in Portland, Oregon. And so anytime there was any amateurs or pro fighters that would come through town or that trained here in town, they would always go to this gym to train. And at a boxing gym, it's a little different than a standard class format that you might be used to if you're taking group class kinds of things, where each coach might have a handful of fighters that they work with and they focus on them and don't really worry about the rest of the people in the gym. That's just kind of their main drive. And well, one of the coaches at this gym was a very well-known coach. He had actually created national and world champion level fighters. And I really wanted him to get to notice me. And so I'd always show up at the gym when I knew he was going to be there and just try to show him how disciplined I was and how hard I worked. And after about following him around for 3 or 4 months, he finally started giving me a few tips and showing me a few things. And every time he'd show me anything, I treated it like it was gold. I did it every day. I really worked hard on it, got all my repetitions in on it. And him seeing this effort, he started spending a little bit of time with me. And so it was only about maybe 3 weeks that I had been training with him. And he said something to me that changed my life forever. In that he told me that if I really wanted to be a good boxer, I should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. And here I am, this, 19, 20-year-old kid that doesn't know much of anything and thinking about Tai Chi. Like the only thing I knew about it at that point was seeing old people in the park practicing Tai Chi and thinking, how is this going to help me be a better boxer? Right. And so, I had a lot of trust in him and I really respected him. So I took on the practice and it changed my whole life in so many ways. And that's why I've been so passionate about, delivering that to my students. And I've seen through the years, I've been teaching for 30 years now. I've seen it change hundreds of people's lives in many different scenarios. And that motivation is what keeps me going and making me really want to help people and get the word out about this practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, of course, they can go to PortlandTaiChiAcademy.com, because you do online stuff there as well. And I I find it very fascinating, because I've done meditative work but never Tai Chi, and I certainly missed the mark that what it is to take you into a meditative state.
Yes. So with the meditative arts, there's often a misconception that meditation is supposed to take you into nirvana and you forget about every thought in your mind and you go quiet.
I had that.
I I hear people all the time will come into the academy or they'll send me a message online and they'll be, I tried meditation. It doesn't work for me. I can't quiet my mind. And that's just a misunderstanding of what the practice was intended for. It's not about being successful only if you can quiet your mind. It's the process of doing the practice. And say you meditate for 20 minutes a day or an hour a day or whatever that is for you. And during that 20-minute session, you get distracted 50 times. You think of this thought, you think of this activity, whatever it is. Every time you have a distraction, you use whatever kind of meditation practice you're doing, whether it's a sitting practice with the breath, or you're focusing on an energetic circulation or doing a movement practice. You use that practice to help bring you back to center. So that distraction took you away from center. You use the practice to come back to that focused center. And now you do this over time, every day. You start getting thousands of repetitions of being distracted and coming back to focus over and over again. Now something happens to you during the day, whether it be a distracting conversation or something that kind of throws you for a loop. You're so trained and so in tune with helping your mind come back to that focused state. It doesn't take you 10 minutes of frustration to figure something out. You immediately come back to center and can respond with a more educated, compassionate response that's going to be a lot more beneficial to you and to anybody around you. And that's kind of one of the ways where meditation can be so valuable for you.
Knocking Doors Down by Carlos Vieira, now available wherever you get audiobooks.
I wasn't done partying, and I didn't want the binge to end. I think I knew that when I finally got home, I'd have to face what I had done, and I wasn't ready to do that. Being responsible for my actions wasn't something I was looking forward to. I had abandoned my wife and baby, my family, and my business. I wanted to avoid the shame of returning to what I had left behind. Even though I was not yet going home, I wasn't sure I had enough resources to continue the binge.
Click the link in the podcast description to find out more. Hey, first, it's funny where people that I've heard that, well, I can't meditate. I'm like, what are you talking about? You just told me that you were focused on terrible news for 2 days. You were meditating. Okay. And for me is one of those misconceptions of it that it was going to be this quieted mind immediately. And like I tell newcomers to recovery in their sobriety, you're going to suck at it at first, and it's okay.
Yes, it's a process, and it's not, meditation's not meant to be a hobby we do once or twice a week. It's meant to be a way of life, and so within the meditative practice, there is the ritual practices, active practices, and philosophical practices. The ritual practice is kind of your core training that you want to do every day, just like you're brushing your teeth. You never miss it. And it can be done in as little as 20 minutes. It could be a sitting meditation, a standing meditation, a movement practice. There's lots of things that you can incorporate for a ritual practice. And this should always be evolving as well. So it's not going to be the same today as it will 1 year and 5 years from now. Then we have our active practices, and active practices are things that we can incorporate into our day when we're walking down the street or standing in line at the grocery store. And so we want to use these things as well as often as we can to help remember how to stay in tune and look inside throughout the day. And that's going to help deepen our ritual practices when we get to those on our daily practice. Then lastly, we also have philosophical practices, and those can be either ritual based or active based. And they can be things like, for example, a gratitude practice or a memorization of sayings or repeating of a mantra, different things that cause different energetic things in the body, and then also energetic states of mind and focus that you can use for an intent to try to get a different outcome.
What I'm hearing there too is that this is it's a pathway of raising one's own consciousness and not just being subconscious in your actions and reactions, but conscious participant in your life, really.
Exactly. And so you're learning how to see things more in tune. So when we talk about yielding,
Mm.
which is one of the concepts in martial arts and meditation, there's three different kinds of yielding. There's physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding. So when we talk about that expanded awareness, when you think about physical yielding, it's the idea, say, I push you and you push me, whoever's the bigger, stronger person with the most leverage is going to push the other person over. But with yielding, instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force. And now I can respond with less effort. And I don't have to butt heads with you and see if I'm bigger and stronger than you. And it's obvious how this is beneficial in the combative sports or even athletics like football or basketball. And so when we learn how to do this, we can be a lot more strategic in our movement and accomplish a lot more with the least amount of effort.
Mm.
Now, in order to be good at this kind of physical yielding, a lot of things have to come into play. You need to be well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium. The body has to be relaxed, the breath has to be calm, and the mind has to be present. It takes years and years to get to a high level of this, especially when you're doing that under pressure and somebody's throwing a punch at you, right? However, from day one, you're going to start seeing things inside yourself more clearly than you ever have before by incorporating these practices. Now, this is where it becomes very interesting because now not only do we experience this in ourselves, but we also increase our awareness and see things more clearly in other people. And this is where we kind of move into what I call mental yielding. An example of mental yielding would be, say, for you and I are having a conversation and I say something that unsettles you and
Mm.
I pick up on it right as soon as it kind of throws you off center, it's a lot easier to adjust the conversation and keep us in a happy place. If I'm not paying attention to that, pretty soon I'm so far off track, you want to knock me upside the head. And so learning how to use yielding in all of our interactions is a very powerful idea. Not only are you just being more considerate to those around you, but you can also strategically guide conversations into the outcome that you want it to go to with the least amount of resistance. And this is very powerful in relationships, in sales, in business, and negotiations. I mean, there's so many different ways to apply this. And so this would be mental yielding. Then we also have emotional yielding. And emotional yielding is very much like mental yielding, but it's with your own interpersonal conflicts. So
Mm.
you think about oftentimes something will happen to us and we'll respond and we'll go down this path. And we might get an hour, a day, a week down that road and realize maybe that wasn't the best choice. But by doing the meditative arts and expanding our awareness, oftentimes we can see these energetic shift changes right from the beginning before they gain too much negative momentum in any one way and learn how to make a different educated choice that oftentimes will cause us a lot less heartache. And so this idea of yielding is so powerful, which is why I wrote an entire book on that idea. And you know, when I explain this to people, which I've been doing for years, I'll often hear people say, "Ah, that makes sense. You know, I do that all the time." However, yes, I do agree. I think we all do this to some degree naturally,
Sure.
but it's kind of like if you or I were to go to a crime scene and see it happen after it happened, right? If we were to go to with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years, he would see things about that scene that we would have no clue of because he's so in tune with all the little things to look for. And with these kinds of things that I'm talking about right now, I feel that you really can't get to a high level of mental and emotional yielding without a meditative practice.
Mhm.
And so it really is something that helps us get to, that 95, 97% of our ability, whereas, most people will never even see 80% of their ability.
I think it the process and what fascinates me about that is here's an example the other day. I'm coming home. I work at this nonprofit, about an hour commute home. A jacked up truck's in front of me. Well, the jacked up truck can drive over the big rig tire carcass that was in the road. I couldn't. I was stuck in the middle lane, so it ended up ripping the splitter off the front of my car, took the wheel well fender protectors. And I noticed for me in the past where I would go is the of course me. And I've noticed the more I've been digging into not only breath work and meditation and starting in the book with a lot of the principles and practices that are here, as I become more knowledgeable, I was able to be as a guy that's been in a couple of car accidents, far more serious, in a state of, well, this is unfortunate. It could have been a lot worse. And I know how to repair this stuff. And the reason I share that, I was able to calmly reflect and look at the situation differently, because in the past, Jeff, I would have, so everything's wrong, the whole world, everybody needs to be blanketed with my problem and everything else, as opposed to looking at, yeah, it's unfortunate, but it could have been a heck of a lot worse, and these are things that I know how to do, and who knows what's to come of it.
Yes, and what you did was a good example, in that if it would have went the other way and you would have gotten irate and spent 10 minutes, going off on whatever, it's a lot harder to adjust and come back to a natural state once you're kind of ecstatic like that. So when you can see things on a little bit of a smaller scale, it's a lot easier to have that positive outcome than if we wait until we're already flying off the handles. And that is one of the things, they often refer to Qigong as the
Mm.
science of the breath. There is literally hundreds of different breathing strategies within a Qigong practice that we use with sitting meditations, energetic circulations, different movement practices. And when you can learn how to use the breath, it can control your physical, mental, and emotional outcomes. And so it's a very powerful tool. And in Chinese philosophy, they call it balancing the kan and li, or the water and fire.
Mm.
And the idea of the breath is, when we talk about the yin side or the yang side or the water and the fire side, an example of the yin side would be, say, for example, you ever listen to somebody sleep. Their natural breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale.
Mm.
And this is the body's natural way of bringing our conscious mind into our subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. And so this is a cooling effect in the body. This helps bring us down to center. And so if we want to take stress out of our lives or a situation, or bring the anxiety level down, we can do these yin-oriented breathing exercises to help bring that stress level down. The flip side of that, on the yang side of the breath, if you ever had to pick up something heavy or push your car, your natural instinct is use the exhale side of the breath, maybe put tension in the breath. This helps generate power and energy. And so we can use that if, for example, we want to boost our creativity, want to change our mindset, we're getting ready for a physical competition, and we want to bring that energetic level of our energetic state up. Also, this can be used to build and strengthen your immune system. So if we do more yang energetic exercises, we could do this for somebody who was, say, recovering from chemotherapy. This would be a great practice for them. And so there's lots of different ways. The meditative arts are very deep. I've been studying them for over 30 years, and I'm just a student learning all the time. And it's one of those things where you can find something for everybody. There's 5 different directions in the meditative arts. There's the athletic martial side of the training, the therapeutic side, the medical side, the philosophical side, and also the meditative or spiritual side. And so as you're building a practice with the meditative arts, you could focus on any one or two of those paths and start building a life practice around that.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that's been really helpful for me, I'm a terrible sleeper, have been for a long time, uh, and definitely have struggled. I guess I probably carry a lot of tension the end of the day. I tend to carry a lot of tension in general, but I was really appreciative of in the book, you talking about sleep and dream training for from a yielding perspective. I mean, this is such helpful stuff. How many people are buying $10,000 beds because of the promise of better sleep? And you just simply say, hey, here's what worked for me, and it's backed with science. I mean,
Right.
what a necessary thing. We all need sleep, but why not have better sleep?
Right. And kind of a little bit of a sidetrack, while there is a lot of things you can do from a meditation perspective to help with sleep, the dream training that you mentioned is also very interesting for those of you that want to get a little bit deeper into the practice, and can be something that a lot of people don't necessarily really know about when they think about meditation.
Mm.
And so maybe for some of you that are already practicing meditation, that could be something very fun to investigate and look into a little bit deeper.
Yeah. Let's say, do you mind expanding a little bit more on dream training? I mean, it really, it is new to me. It's a new concept. I'm like, really? I can do what?
Yeah, so in the beginning, one of the things that will help you recognize your dreaming and just get in the habit of remembering your dreams is having a journal. And so what when I go through periods of time where I'm focusing on my dreams and where I'm doing other things. And when I'm doing this, I'll train myself to every time I dream in the night, I'll wake up and I'll jot down real quick what my dream was and just certain things to memorize it, kind of remember what happened. Pretty soon, after you do this for a couple months, you're going to start recognizing patterns in your dreams and see things that happen over and over again. So, like one of the patterns that I've recognized is that I grew up riding motorcycles, and I will often have a quad or a dirt bike that I'm riding in my dream. And I'll use that as a cue to recognize and tell myself that I'm dreaming so I can wake up within the dream. And when you do this, a lot of interesting things start to happen. You know, you're aware that you're dreaming, but you can control different things that you're doing within the dream. And that's one thing that you can do to kind of help go down that path. Another thing you could do is every night before you go to bed, before you turn off the lights, look at the palm of your hand and tell yourself you're dreaming. And so when you dream, you get in the habit of looking at your hand and telling yourself you're dreaming, and that helps you wake up within the dream and start to experience these lucid dreaming situations where a lot of times they can really offer a lot of insight and give you things that will help you in your practice.
Huh. Even within the dreaming or lucid dreams, are you, I mean, you've been doing this, you feel rested, like well rested? I just, my mind,
I,
when I think of anything that
yeah.
was a dream, it's like, oh, it was not a restful experience.
Yeah, so it doesn't take away from your sleep at all. Now, it does take a little bit of getting used to training yourself to wake up after you dream so you
Mm.
can write down, your dreams and kind of get in that habit. However, I find through a little bit of time and practice and doing this consistently, I'll get up, I'll write my dream down, and then I'll just immediately go right back to sleep like it's just part of the evening and it doesn't really affect me at all. And so I think it does take a little bit of discipline and a little bit of consistency, but once you get in the pattern, it's pretty easy to do.
Yeah. Well, and I know you highlight the importance of, rituals and routines, especially around sleep. Hey, you're speaking to me when you give a few steps in there. I think it's nine of them, and one of them about the electronics off prior to bed because of melatonin, the hormone. I'm the worst guy at it. I'm the guy that's like, okay, I'm tired now. TV off, and so
Yeah.
I think it's these different things in the way you in a wonderful way. The book allows me to have a reflection back of self, maybe lack of a better word, shortcomings, but some holes in rituals and routines that I can definitely improve upon. And again, from your personal experience and science, it's in here.
Yes. So, when you're putting together a practice in the meditative arts, I think it's good to try to pick some things that you are drawn to, whether, for example, we're talking about dreaming here, trying to sleep. This can be something fun. And if you're drawn to that, that kind of helps expand your reason for the practice. And one of the things that I've seen with people through the years is that it's easy to start something and then give up before you see the true benefit of what it has to offer. And so what I always recommend for people is if you're thinking about starting a meditative practice, maybe take an hour at least and sit down and think about all the reasons why you want to meditate. Why is it important to you for your health, for your family, for improving your performance, for whatever is drawing you to the practice? And really find some solid reasons. So next time you start the practice and you're like, I'm kind of tired this morning, I'm going to sleep an extra hour, I'm not going to do my meditation. You'll have a reason to get out of bed, do the practice, because you know that it's going to improve and it's going to make you better. And you talk to any athlete, they'll tell you that some of the most important times of their training is when they went to practice or they went to train when they didn't want to go.
Yeah.
And when you can develop that discipline and that energy to do that, you're going to see so many more benefits from this practice.
Have you dug into the archives of past Knockin' Doors Down podcast episodes? The Knockin' Doors Down podcast archive is available to you for free. Check it out. Here's a snippet from when Charlie Sheen was on the podcast.
AA is not the best place for for a famous atheist. I kept looking for that fucking chapter. So yeah, but it's not a one size fits all.
Sure.
It's like saying that we all think the same, like our brains are built the same. They're just not.
Right. Yeah.
There's such uniqueness involved.
Check out this episode and so many more in the Knockin' Doors Down archive. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumb up, leave a comment, and share with somebody else that you know will get value out of the Knockin' Doors Down podcast. Yeah, well, I mean, is a big part of yielding in general to that crap voice that can sit there, the I don't want to voice, as opposed to the what is best for me to do.
Yes, and that's a kind of an example of how to redirect, right? So say, you say something confrontational to me, it'd be easy for me to be like right back at you, and now we're in this escalating argument. But if I could take what you said and redirect it in a way that makes you think about something a little bit differently, leading towards an outcome that I want to see rather than us butting heads, this can be very powerful. Well, we do that with our own interpersonal conflicts all the time. And so if you could use that, and that's why I was talking about really wanting to build some strong whys. So when you have that, you can use those positive reasons to redirect that negative voice in your head.
Well, and for so many of us, Jeff, I primarily work and deal with people who are in recovery or loved ones of that, and that inner voice, let alone the stories that negative inner voice tells us, is some of the toughest things to overcome. I know for me, being able to reflect and going, my God, this tough thing in life that was external, No, it was my thinking about the situation so often and what I thought it said about me, let alone, looking for external validations and all these other things.
And you're so right. We beat ourselves up all the time. If you have something bad happen to you in your life, and every day you replay that over and over and over in your head, pretty soon that's who you are. You don't know any other way else to think. And so you've got to start by programming different thoughts in your head to have a different outcome and to become a different person. There's no way that you're ever going to move out of that funk or that that, that negativity if every day you tell yourself the same story. And so the trick is when we start telling ourselves that story, and we've all done this, I don't care who you are, is you say something negative about yourself or about something that happened, and then that leads to the next thing negative and the next thing negative. And eventually you're so far down this negative track that it's kind of hard to pull yourself back.
Mm.
Well, with the meditative arts, we can expand our awareness physically, mentally, and emotionally to the point where as soon as we see the pebbles start to roll down the hill, we pick it up rather than before it becomes an avalanche. And it's a lot easier to adjust those thoughts and that energetic outcome, whether it be physical, mental, or emotional.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you find that newcomers that work with you and in any of your disciplines, really, that the meditative arts will just blanket at that one of the biggest misconceptions is that they have to be in a certain kind of location and there has to be maybe tonal music on, or that they just overcomplicate the process?
Yeah, so it really is a lifestyle.
Mm,
And you want to have, you know, active practices that you can do all day, every day, philosophical practices that you can do all day, every day. And in your ritual practice, I'm glad you mentioned music in the background because it's something we haven't touched on yet. And I find that this is something that really confuses a lot of beginning practitioners.
mm,
When you do a meditative practice, at least for your ritual practice, that, that time you set aside every day, it's extremely important to not have any music, not have any kind of exterior audio coming in or video screens. It's okay to learn a meditative practice through a video or an audio, but when you're doing your ritual time, that's meant to look inside yourself.
mm,
That's not meant to be listening to something else or looking at something else. It's so difficult to notice everything that's going on in our own bodies and minds. And if we think we're meditating by listening to a song, or if we think we're meditating by watching a video screen, we're missing out on a lot of that connection. And that's what the practice is meant to do for us, is help us to be more in tune with our bodies, with our minds and our emotions.
yeah, absolutely. Well, and even offering spiritual too.
Yes.
Well, before we jump into random questions, Jeff, anything maybe that we didn't touch on that you like to converse about?
The only thing I would like to mention is earlier you mentioned PortlandTaiChiAcademy.com.
Yeah.
That is great if you're in the Portland area and you'd like to come in and see us. But if you're outside of the Portland area, going to the YieldingWarrior.com would be the best option for you because we have a lot of online programs there, as well as our teacher training program. And also, if you're interested in getting a free copy of the book, you could go to the YieldingWarrior.com/book, and we'll send you out a free copy. You just pay for shipping and handling.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. That's what I did. Got my copy right here. So it's a
Nice.
great book, and I'm glad to be able to dig through it and connect with you. And it's one of these neat situations where someone that's indirect mentor sort of can become a direct mentor, and I encourage people to do that. It's the easiest thing you can do now in this day and age is somebody's doing something that you're interested in, reach out and find more of Jeff there at theyieldingwarrior.com. As you said, those links are in the podcast description. All right, let's jump into a couple of quick random questions, and I'll ask you for the final thoughts. Do you have a personal credo or belief that's important to you in life? Maybe something you repeat in meditation?
Something that I've always tried to live by, and especially in the latter half of my life, is being considerate in every interaction, in every scenario where I get the opportunity to teach people. The more that I can offer consideration, the more I can connect with people and the more that I can help them. And so, one of my old teachers or meditation teachers told me that the strongest love potion in the world is consideration. And it's just another benefit of that. If you're considerate to those around you, they're going to like being around you more.
Yeah. Yeah. That's absolutely true. Uh, okay. Here's a fun one. I know you're not much of a movie watching guy, but let's say if you were a superhero and you could have one superpower, what would it be?
The power to not age,
Really? That's a
to
new one. I've
to
not
stay
heard that.
stay young and healthy.
Yeah. Now is that like a live forever or just be healthy in the life that you have?
I could be swayed either way.
All right. Sounds good. Um, oh, if you could travel anywhere in time, but you had to stay there for at least a month, where would you want to go and why?
I would like to go back about 100 or 150 years in this area that I live and take my fly rod with me and go steelhead fishing.
Uh, just for the nature of it. Yeah. That's
Yep. Being
that
out in nature and catching fish, there's nothing better.
Yeah. Different way then, that's for sure. All right, this is a fun one, I think. If a movie was made about your life, who would you want to play adult you?
Uh, Sean Connery.
All right, I could see that. All right, one last random question here. If you had one thing that you could tell your childhood self, what would it be?
To dream big and always believe in yourself.
Jeff, this is where I like to give you the floor. Anything that you would like to lend to people? Oftentimes folks tune into this podcast as they're struggling or have a loved one who's struggling that you might want to share.
I've had many students through the years who have been going through, serious anxiety and depression and many life-changing scenarios. And you need to believe that tomorrow's going to be better, and you need to be consistently doing things that are going to be good for you. One of those obviously could be the meditative arts, but every choice that you make every day is going to change how tomorrow affects you.
Mm.
And oftentimes when we get depressed or we go through a bout of serious negativity, we start taking away the things that are good for us and focusing on the things that are bringing us down. And so, even though it's hard to get out of bed sometimes, or it's hard to get out of the house and focus on something positive, you got to start making those positive choices, and that's what's going to make it better tomorrow.
Absolutely. Mr. Jeff Patterson, thank you so much for your time and coming on, and thank you for the book.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And on that note, remember, no outside solutions to inside problems and keep knocking doors down.